It was just another regular day in class when Jake noticed something that seemed so obvious. The worn shoes on Alex's feet, holes on the soles, the laces fraying as if they had been tied too many times. The shoes screamed poverty, a stark contrast to the polished sneakers the other kids were wearing. And, in the eyes of someone like Jake, who came from a family that could afford to buy the latest trends, it was a reason to mock. It was the perfect moment, an opportunity to make fun of someone, to gain a laugh at another person's expense, to bolster his status in front of his friends. But what Jake didn't realize was that this seemingly insignificant act of bullying was about to unfold into something much bigger, something that would make him question everything he thought he knew about Alex, and about life in general. Now, I know what you're thinking. It sounds like the typical bully versus the victim story, right? But hold on, because this is where things take an unexpected turn. Trust me, you want to stick around for what happens next. If you've ever wondered what it really means to judge someone based on their appearance or their circumstances, or if you've ever felt like you didn't fit in because of things beyond your control, you're going to want to hear this one. And if you've ever been that person who's been hurt by something someone said or did to you, well, this story is for you too. At first, it all seems pretty standard. Jake and his group of friends laugh at Alex, make snide comments about his worn shoes. All the while, Alex stays silent, the weight of their words sinking in. For Jake, it's a small victory. He's the popular kid in class, and showing someone like Alex's place felt satisfying. But as you and I both know, there's always more to the story than what meets the eye. It wasn't long before their teacher, Mrs. Larson, who had been quietly observing the situation from a distance, decided it was time to step in. She didn't just scold Jake for his behavior. No, she did something that would completely flip everything Jake thought he knew about Alex on its head. She shared something with the entire class, a secret that had been hidden for far too long. What happened next? Well, I'm not going to spoil it for you just yet. But I'll tell you this, the truth was far more powerful than any insult Jake could throw at Alex. And it would change the way Jake and everyone in that room viewed not just Alex, but the way they looked at the world around them. Suddenly, those worn shoes didn't look so insignificant. They weren't just shoes. They were a symbol of something far more profound, something that would shake Jake's entire perspective. I want you to think about it for a second. Imagine being in Alex's shoes, literally. Walking into school every day, knowing that your shoes are the first thing everyone notices. The feeling of dread when you walk into a room full of people who are quick to judge, who see the surface and not the story behind it. It's hard to even fathom, isn't it? But that's what Alex faced every single day. And what Jake didn't realize was that the mocking comments, the laughter, and the stares weren't just hurting Alex. They were reinforcing a stereotype that Alex couldn't control. But just when you think you know where the story is going, when you think the bullies have won and the underdog is simply another victim, the teacher, Mrs. Larson, steps up and reveals the real reason behind Alex's shoes. What she shared was a game changer, a revelation that no one saw coming. So, here's the million-dollar question. What is the truth behind Alex's worn shoes? Why had he been walking around in those shoes for so long, knowing full well the ridicule he'd face from his peers? Was there a deeper reason that no one had thought to ask? You're about to find out. And, believe me, it's going to make you rethink how you see the people around you. Before I dive into the rest of the story, I need you to do something for me. Take a second to think about how often you judge people based on what they wear, how they look, or even how they carry themselves. It's easy to assume that people with worn-out shoes or ragged clothes are just poor or lazy, right? But what if those shoes are a symbol of something much bigger?
Something you can't see with the naked eye.
The truth is, we often judge people without knowing the whole story, and that's what makes this story so powerful. Stick with me, because the answer to the mystery behind Alex's shoes is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about kindness, empathy, and how we treat each other. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have a new perspective on how you view the world and the people in it. So, what happens when Mrs. Larson finally shares the real reason behind Alex's worn shoes? Does Jake have a change of heart? Does Alex finally get the respect he deserves? Or does everything continue as it always has? Well, you'll just have to keep watching to find out. Trust me, you won't want to miss the moment when the truth comes out. It's a twist you won't see coming, and it might just change the way you see the world forever. As the days passed, the tension in the classroom only grew. Jake, the school's self-proclaimed king of popularity, had become more insistent in his teasing. Each time Alex walked into the room, Jake would subtly make comments, his voice dripping with mockery. "Hey, Alex, are those shoes on their last leg yet? Or you might want to get those patched up before they fall apart completely." His friends would snicker, and Alex, hearing the cruel jokes, would shrink even further into himself. But it wasn't just the bullying in the classroom that was weighing on Alex. No, there was something much darker brewing in his life, something far beyond what any of his classmates could have imagined. You see, Alex didn't always have to deal with the whispers, the stares, and the cruel jokes. Not long ago, he had been just another kid in the class, quiet, maybe a little shy, but far from the target of the school's popular crowd. It wasn't until last year that things started to change. His family's situation had taken a turn for the worse. His dad, once the family's breadwinner, had lost his job at the local factory. What followed was a domino effect of financial troubles, rent being late, bills piling up, and the once comfortable home they had lived in becoming a distant memory. Alex's mom did everything she could to keep the family afloat, working 2 jobs to try and make ends meet. But even her hard work couldn't stretch the dollars far enough. Alex had learned early on to live with the uncertainty, the pressure, the feeling of not quite belonging anywhere. He understood that things were different for his family now. It was more than just financial strain. It was the constant weight of worrying about whether there would be enough food on the table or enough money for a simple school trip. And all the while, Alex tried to shield his classmates from the truth, putting on a brave face, hoping that no one would see the cracks forming in his world. But things like that have a way of slipping through the cracks when you least expect it. And Jake, well, he had noticed. He'd been watching Alex from the moment he saw those worn shoes, and he had assumed it was just another sign of someone who couldn't afford the same luxuries he took for granted. But Jake didn't know the whole story. He had no idea about the late nights Alex's mom spent working, or the way Alex would come home from school only to collapse into bed exhausted after helping take care of his younger siblings. He didn't know that Alex would often wear the same pair of shoes day after day because there simply wasn't enough money to buy a new pair. It was a small thing, but it was a symbol of everything Alex's family was going through, everything they were sacrificing just to survive. But who could understand that? Who would take the time to ask? As the bullying continued, Alex kept himself more and more. He began skipping lunch periods, hiding in the library, pretending to study, even though he wasn't really getting anything done. He couldn't focus. His mind kept wandering back to the cruel words, the laughter, the feeling of being invisible to everyone except the ones who wanted to tear him down. And yet, he didn't want to tell anyone. He didn't want to be a burden, to drag anyone into his problems. So he suffered in silence, hoping things would get better, even though deep down, he knew that things weren't going to change anytime soon. But the turning point came during one of those long, silent lunches in the library. Alex was sitting at his usual spot, head down, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone. He hadn't even noticed Mrs. Larson, his teacher, walking by until she stopped right in front of him. "Alex," she said softly, her voice low enough not to draw attention. "Can we talk for a moment?" Alex froze, panic rising in his chest. What could she want? Was she going to report the bullying? Was she going to tell him that he was overreacting? That he should just ignore it? He didn't know what to say. But Mrs. Larson didn't give him the chance to respond. She sat down beside him and, after a long pause, simply said, "I know what you've been going through." It was as if the walls Alex had built up came crashing down in that one moment. He could barely keep himself together, but somehow he managed to nod. Mrs. Larson had been a kind presence in the classroom, but Alex hadn't realized just how much she had been paying attention. She didn't speak much in class, preferring to let her students figure things out for themselves, but now it was clear she had been watching him closely. And what she said next left Alex completely stunned. "I know about your shoes," Mrs. Larson continued, her tone gentle. "But that's not the whole story, is it?" Alex's heart raced. How could she know? Had he been too obvious? Had the other kids been whispering about it? Before he could speak, Mrs. Larson raised her hand, silencing him. I think it's time everyone knew the real reason behind those shoes. The reason Alex has been wearing them, day after day. It's not what anyone thinks. She stood up, her eyes kind yet firm, and walked toward the front of the classroom. In that moment, everything changed. Alex didn't know what was coming, but a knot formed in his stomach. Mrs. Larson's words were a mystery. She wasn't just talking about shoes anymore. She was talking about something deeper, something more personal, something that could shatter the very foundation of what Jake and the others believed about him. And what she was about to reveal wasn't just going to change how the class saw Alex, it was going to change everything. But the question on Alex's mind, the one that gnawed at him as he stared at the clock ticking away in that silent library, was this. Was he ready for the truth to come out? Would the people who had laughed at him, who had made his life miserable, suddenly see him for who he really was? Or would they use it against him, twist it to make him seem even weaker? What would happen when Mrs. Larson exposed the reality of his life, the hardship he had kept hidden from everyone? And what could Jake possibly do when the truth was revealed? Would he feel guilty for every cruel word, every mockery, every sneer? Would it matter? Or would he just laugh it off like he always did? All of these questions were racing through Alex's mind as Mrs. Larson prepared to share his truth with the class. There was no going back now. The classroom fell into an uneasy silence as Mrs. Larson stood at the front, preparing to reveal Alex's secret. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her, waiting for the moment of truth. But before she could speak, something strange happened. The door to the classroom creaked open, and in walked Principal Thompson, his face a mask of authority. The whole atmosphere shifted instantly. His sudden arrival was enough to make the hairs on the back of Alex's neck stand up. Something about this felt off, like a bad omen. Mrs. Larson's expression faltered for just a moment, but she quickly regained her composure, giving the principal a brief nod. There was no mistaking it. The tension was palpable, thicker than ever. Mrs. Larson, I need to speak with you for a moment, Principal Thompson said, his voice cold and calculated. The rest of the class watched in confusion, but they could all sense that something wasn't right. Alex felt his stomach drop. He hadn't expected this. Had someone found out? Had someone warned the principal about what was about to be revealed? Was he even safe anymore? It wasn't just the possibility of the class finding out that worried him. It was the feeling that everything was slipping out of his control. The truth, his truth, was just inches from being exposed, and now, it seemed like forces beyond his reach were conspiring to stop it. Mrs. Larson hesitated, her eyes darting briefly to Alex before she reluctantly followed the principal out into the hallway. Alex sat frozen in his seat, his mind racing. What was going on? Why had the principal interrupted at the exact moment when Mrs. Larson was about to share the truth? It wasn't like him to interfere in class matters. There was a feeling gnawing at Alex, a feeling that something was being hidden from him. Something wasn't adding up, and he needed to figure out what it was. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The rest of the class fidgeted in their seats, whispering quietly among themselves, but no one dared to speak out loud. Alex's thoughts were swirling. Had Mrs. Larson been silenced? Or was it something more sinister? He glanced toward the back of the room, where his friend Mark sat, looking unusually quiet. Mark had always been a bit of an enigma, friendly enough, but always hanging around the edges, never quite in the center of things. Suddenly, Mark's eyes met Alex's. The look in his eyes sent a chill down Alex's spine. Something wasn't right. He had seen that look before, in the days leading up to when his family's financial troubles first started. It was a look of secrecy, as if Mark knew something he wasn't saying. Before Alex could ask what was going on, Mrs. Larson returned to the room. Her expression had changed, a slight frown tugging at the corners of her mouth. But it wasn't just her expression that gave Alex a sense of unease. It was the way she avoided his gaze, the way her voice wavered when she spoke. "We'll have to discuss this another time, Alex," she said, her tone abrupt. "Class is almost over." Alex's heart sank. He knew something had changed, something had been interrupted, and now the moment had passed. The opportunity to reveal the truth, to finally get some answers, had been stolen from him. He tried to catch her eye, but Mrs. Larson avoided him, as though she were deliberately pulling away. The suspicion grew in his chest like a heavy weight. After school, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He walked slowly to the bus stop, his eyes scanning the crowd of students, but no one seemed to notice the quiet desperation in his every step. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the moment when Principal Thompson had walked into the room and the conversation that followed in the hallway. What had Mrs. Larson been about to say? What was the truth she had almost shared? More importantly, why had the principal shown up just at that moment? It felt like a well-timed interruption, but who could be behind it? As Alex waited for the bus, Mark approached him. The usual friendly grin was gone, replaced by a look of concern. "Hey, Alex, can we talk?" Mark asked, his voice low. Alex was hesitant but nodded. The two of them walked away from the crowd of students into the empty space near the edge of the parking lot. Mark glanced around, making sure no one was close enough to hear. There was something in the way he was acting, something off. It was as though he was scared. Mark had always been a good friend, but something was different today. He was acting like he was hiding something, like he knew more than he was letting on. "Look, I don't know how to say this, but—" Mark hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "You've got to be careful, Alex. People are watching you." Alex frowned, confused. "What are you talking about? Who's watching me?" Mark shifted uneasily. "I can't explain everything right now. Just trust me, okay? You don't want to dig too deep. There's stuff about you, about your family, that you don't know. You've got to be careful who you trust. Some people don't want the truth to come out." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. What was Mark talking about? What truth? Was there something about his family he didn't know? He could feel his mind racing, the questions multiplying, but before he could ask anything more, Mark was already walking away, his face a mask of uncertainty. "Don't say anything to Mrs. Larson, okay?" Mark called over his shoulder, his voice strangely urgent. "Just let it go. Let it go." Alex's blood ran cold. What had Mark been trying to tell him? Why was he warning him to back off? The mystery was deepening, but the more Alex tried to unravel it, the more tangled it became. Who was hiding something? Who didn't want him to uncover the truth? And what was this buried secret that Mark seemed so desperate to protect? That night, as Alex lay awake in bed, his thoughts kept spiraling. Every answer led to more questions, and the deeper he dug, the more dangerous it felt. Was Mark a friend? Or was he hiding something more sinister? Why had the principal interrupted just as Mrs. Larson was about to speak? And most chilling of all, what truth was Mrs. Larson trying to share, and why was everyone so desperate to keep it a secret? Alex knew one thing for certain. This story wasn't over. The answers were out there, but the more he searched for them, the more complicated and dangerous they became. And now, more than ever, he needed to find out what really happened before it was too late. But as the clock ticked on, one question gnawed at him. Was the truth worth the risk? Or was uncovering it going to cost him more than he was ready to lose? The next morning, the weight of everything that had happened the previous day still hung heavy on Alex's shoulders as he made his way to school. The words Mark had said kept echoing in his head, and no matter how hard he tried to shake it off, the feeling that something was dangerously wrong continued to creep in. He kept replaying the conversation with Mark, trying to make sense of it. What had he meant by "don't dig too deep"? Why was he so insistent that Alex let it go? The more Alex thought about it, the more it felt like Mark was involved in something he didn't want Alex to uncover. But before Alex could dwell too much on his friend's warning, he found himself in a whole new set of complications. His older sister, Mia, had been unusually quiet when he came downstairs that morning. She wasn't the type to hide things, especially from him, so the fact that she wasn't saying anything struck Alex as odd. Mia had always been the protective older sibling, caring, smart, and completely devoted to keeping the family together. But something about her demeanor today felt different. She was distracted, her eyes darting around as if she was trying to avoid something, like she knew something that Alex didn't. It wasn't until later that day, when Alex was at lunch, that he noticed Mia talking to someone in the hallway, a man, one Alex didn't recognize. The conversation was brief, but the tension between them was obvious. Mia's usual confident stance was gone. She was leaning against the lockers, her arms crossed tightly, as if bracing herself for something. The man, rough around the edges, with a thick beard and a worn jacket, looked like someone who didn't belong in the school's halls. Alex was about to approach them when he saw Mia glance nervously in his direction. She quickly straightened up and started walking away, leaving the man standing there. He watched her disappear down the hall, a feeling of unease settling in his chest. Who was that man? Why had Mia been speaking to him in such a way? And why was she so nervous? His curiosity got the better of him. Later that afternoon, as he was leaving school, Alex decided to follow Mia. She seemed to be headed toward the old part of town, an area Alex hadn't been to in a while. It wasn't a place he would visit normally. The streets were quiet, rundown, filled with old buildings and abandoned storefronts. It was a place that seemed stuck in time, a shadow of what it had once been. Alex watched as Mia entered a small, unmarked building, the door creaking shut behind her. His heart skipped a beat. Was this connected to what had been going on? Was this related to the strange warning Mark had given him? Something about it felt wrong, out of place. His sister, who had always been so careful, was now sneaking around in the middle of the afternoon. This wasn't like her at all. Alex waited for a while, his mind racing with all the possibilities. What was Mia doing in there? Why hadn't she told him? As he debated whether to go inside after her, a sudden thought hit him. What if Mia was somehow involved in the things he had been trying to uncover? What if there was more to her than he had ever known? But before he could make any more plans, Alex received a text message, the familiar ping from his phone breaking through the thick air of uncertainty. He pulled it out of his pocket, his eyes scanning the screen. The message was brief but chilling. Stop looking into it, or you'll regret it. The sender's number was unrecognizable, just a string of numbers with no name attached. It felt like a warning, one meant to push him back, to keep him from digging deeper. The text left a cold feeling in his stomach. This was no longer just about his shoes. This wasn't just some schoolyard teasing or the strained circumstances of his family. The stakes were higher now. Someone wanted him to stop asking questions, and they were willing to go to any lengths to ensure he did. And the fact that this warning came right after he saw Mia talking to the mysterious man in the hallway made everything feel even more complicated. Was she involved in whatever secret was swirling around him? Did Mia know something she wasn't telling him? Could she be hiding something too? As the day wore on, the pieces of the puzzle seemed to be slipping further and further from his grasp. Alex couldn't tell if Mark, Mia, or anyone else in his life was a friend, an ally, or even an enemy. Each person seemed to be connected to something bigger, something darker, and the more he learned, the more it felt like he was being pulled into something far beyond his understanding. Who was this mysterious man, and what role did he play in Mia's life? Was Mia in danger, or was she part of something even more dangerous? The walls around him were closing in, and Alex felt the heavy weight of the truth pressing down on him, but every step he took toward it seemed to lead him further into a maze of secrecy and deception. Later that evening, as Alex tried to process everything that had happened, another strange thing occurred. His mom, who had always been his rock, came to him in the kitchen, her face pale, her eyes tired. She looked like she had been crying, though she quickly wiped the tears away when she saw Alex's concerned expression. "Everything's fine," she said, forcing a smile. But Alex could tell something wasn't right. She wasn't being honest with him. He felt it deep in his gut. Before he could ask her what was going on, his phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from his bank account. He opened the app, only to find that a large sum of money had been withdrawn from his account, a sum far greater than anything he had ever seen before. His pulse quickened as he stared at the transaction. This was no accident. Someone was trying to cover something up, and it wasn't just his shoes, his family's finances, or the teasing from school anymore. Whoever was behind all of this was willing to do whatever it took to keep their secret buried. Suddenly, it all clicked for Alex. Mia's secret meeting, the warning, the strange man, the money gone from his bank account. It was all connected. The truth was buried deep within the people he trusted most, and the more he pushed, the more dangerous things were becoming. But he had no choice. He had to find out what was really going on. The problem was Alex didn't know who to trust anymore. Everyone seemed to be hiding something, and with every new twist, the stakes got higher. Every person in his life now felt like a potential threat, and the more he dug, the more tangled the web became. Would he uncover the truth, or would the mystery consume him completely? He knew one thing for certain now: the deeper he went, the more perilous it would become. And soon, he would find out just how far people were willing to go to keep their secrets hidden. But would it be too late by then? Would Alex's search for answers come at a cost he couldn't afford? The clock was ticking, and the truth was getting closer, but it was only a matter of time before someone made sure it would never see the light of day. The following days felt like they were drenched in a thick fog. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that every move he made was under the watchful eyes of someone, or something, that he couldn't quite identify. It started out as a subtle sensation, the kind of unease you get when you feel like someone's standing just behind you, but when Alex looked, no one was there. But it didn't stop. It grew. The feeling began to crawl under his skin, wrapping around his thoughts and squeezing until he couldn't think straight. He would turn a corner and spot someone in the distance, walking too quickly, standing too still, their eyes always glancing in his direction. Then, when he blinked, they would disappear. It felt like being trapped in a game of cat and mouse, where the stakes were life and death, and the mouse was always one step behind. The breaking point came late one night, when Alex sat in his room, scrolling through his phone, trying to distract himself from the growing paranoia. It was just after midnight, and everything in the house had fallen into an unnatural silence. His parents had gone to bed hours ago, and his sister, Mia, hadn't returned from wherever she'd disappeared to earlier that day. He still hadn't figured out what she was up to, but that strange, ominous meeting with the man in the hallway had set off alarm bells in his mind. Suddenly, the light outside his window flickered, just once, like the briefest flash of something moving. It could have been the wind. It could have been nothing at all. But Alex's heart jumped into his throat. His instincts told him something was wrong. His phone buzzed on the bed next to him, a message from an unknown number. "You're next." The words hit him like a slap to the face. The blood drained from his body as his hands shook uncontrollably. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't process the gravity of the message. His mind raced through 100 possibilities, none of which made sense. Was it a joke? Someone playing with him? But deep down, he knew this wasn't a prank. Whoever was behind this wasn't playing games. The text felt like a direct threat, a warning that something terrible was about to happen. And the fact that it had come after everything else, the strange behavior of Mia, the mysterious man, the text warning him to stop digging, made it all feel far too real. He jumped up from his bed, grabbing his phone and bolting for the door, the urgency pulling him down the stairs and into the dark hallway. He didn't know what he was running from yet, but something inside him told him that time was running out. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, a loud noise from outside froze him in his tracks. A car engine revved in the distance, tires screeching as it sped down the road outside. The noise seemed to get closer, faster, like it was hunting him. Alex's pulse quickened, and for the first time, the sense of danger was no longer a vague feeling. It was a cold, undeniable presence. He wasn't alone. He wasn't safe. A knock on the door made him flinch. Alex's heart skipped. His mind was racing. Who could it be? It was too late for anyone to be visiting. He moved slowly, creeping toward the door. Through the peephole, all he could see was a shadow, a tall figure standing in the dark, their face hidden. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He knew better than to open it. Whoever was on the other side of that door wasn't there with good intentions. But then the figure spoke, their voice low and almost soothing, yet there was a sharpness to it that sent a jolt of fear through him. "You need to stop," the voice said. "It's too late to turn back now. You don't know what you're dealing with." Alex's hand gripped the doorknob, but he couldn't bring himself to open it. What was going on? Who was this person? Was it someone involved with Mia? Had they been watching him all along? The last few days were now a blur of strange events and unsettling clues, each one leading him to believe that his entire life had been turned upside down, but this felt different. This wasn't just a mystery, it was a threat, something darker, something dangerous. And the closer Alex got to the truth, the more it seemed like someone was determined to keep him from uncovering it. Then, without warning, the figure on the other side of the door stepped away. Alex heard the footsteps retreating into the night, the sound fading until the silence seemed suffocating. For a moment, he stood there, frozen, unable to move or think. But the message was clear. Someone wanted him to stop. His mind raced again. How did they know where he was? How did they know what he was looking into? The pieces of the puzzle were scattered everywhere, and every answer he found only led to more questions. But now, he realized, his search for the truth had put him on the edge of something much darker than he could have ever imagined. And the more he pushed to uncover it, the more he felt like he was stepping into a trap, one he wasn't sure he could escape. Alex's thoughts were interrupted by another buzz from his phone. It was another message, this time from Mia. But it wasn't a text. It was a video. His hands trembled as he opened it, his breath catching in his throat. The video started with a shaky shot of Mia standing in a dimly lit room, her face tense, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and desperation. "I didn't want you to get caught up in this, Alex." Mia's voice cracked as she whispered into the camera. "But now it's too late. They know about you. They know what you're doing. Please just stop." Before it's too late. Before Alex could react, the video abruptly cut to black, leaving him staring at the screen in disbelief. He couldn't breathe. What was happening? What was Mia involved in? The video felt like a final warning, a desperate plea to stop digging, to let go of whatever thread he had been unraveling. But it was already too late. He couldn't let it go. He couldn't just walk away, not now. The deeper he went, the more his life seemed to unravel. The stakes were higher than ever, and the walls were closing in. Every person he had trusted was now a suspect. Everyone had something to hide. As Alex stood there, the weight of everything crashing down on him, his phone buzzed again. Another text message. This one was short, direct, and final. "You're running out of time." The silence in the room was deafening, and in that moment, Alex knew that he wasn't just chasing a mystery anymore. He was being hunted, and the truth was more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And unless he could figure out who was behind it all and what they wanted, it wouldn't be long before someone made sure he never found out. Just as Alex thought he was reaching the edge of the mystery, as if he had finally uncovered the dark truths lurking beneath the surface, something unexpected happened that made him question everything. He had been feeling the weight of the threat growing heavier with every passing moment. The mysterious warnings, the strange figure at his door, Mia's cryptic video, but it was the conversation with his father that shattered everything. Alex had always seen his dad as a steady rock, a man who worked long hours, stayed out of trouble, and made sure that their family was taken care of. There was always a calm confidence about him, and Alex had never once doubted his father's loyalty or integrity. But when Alex tried to confront him about the strange events that had been unfolding, he realized that the truth his father had been hiding was far more sinister than anything he had imagined. It started with a simple question. Alex, feeling desperate and running out of options, approached his dad late one evening, hoping for some kind of explanation that could make sense of the chaos surrounding him. He asked about the man Mia had been talking to in the hallway, the one who had made Alex's gut churn with suspicion. His father paused, an odd look flickering across his face. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Alex caught it. For a moment, his dad's usual calm demeanor faltered, replaced by something darker, something Alex had never seen before. "You don't need to worry about that," his father said, his voice much colder than usual. "It's nothing, Alex. Just stay out of it. Trust me." But that wasn't enough. The warning Alex had received earlier, the texts, the unsettling feeling that someone was playing with him, it all felt connected. His dad's sudden defensiveness, the way his tone had shifted so sharply, only fueled Alex's need for answers. He couldn't shake the sense that something was deeply wrong. There was a piece to this puzzle that he hadn't even considered yet, something that had been hiding in plain sight, right under his nose. He pressed harder. "Dad, I'm not stupid. What's really going on? Why are you acting like this?" And that was when it happened. In one swift motion, his father's expression changed, his face contorted with a mixture of regret and anger, as if he had been holding something back for far too long. "I never wanted you to find out like this," his dad muttered, the words barely above a whisper. "But you're right to be worried. You've been asking questions, Alex, and you've stumbled onto something bigger than you realize." Alex's heart skipped a beat. Every instinct told him he should have walked away right then. He should have dropped it and tried to forget all of this. But he couldn't. His curiosity, his need to understand, was stronger than the fear now pulsing through him. "Bigger than what?" Alex asked, his voice barely audible. "What are you talking about, Dad?" His father looked at him, the weight of unspoken years pressing down on both of them. "I didn't think it would ever come to this. I tried to keep you safe. I thought I could protect you from the truth, but I guess it's too late now. You need to know that I've been involved in something I shouldn't have gotten mixed up in. And Mia's not the person you think she is either." The words sent a chill down Alex's spine. His father had been hiding something that had to do with the strange events surrounding Mia, the mysterious man, and the dark web of danger that was quickly closing in around them. Alex's mind raced, trying to process what his father had just revealed. What did he mean that Mia wasn't who he thought she was? What had his father been involved in? The answers were just out of reach, dangling in front of him like a thread he couldn't quite grasp. Before Alex could respond, his dad sighed, the air between them thick with the weight of the secret he had been carrying for years. "You want to know what's really going on?" "Fine," he said, his voice strained. "But know this, Alex, whatever you think you know, whatever you've uncovered, it's not the whole story. Mia's been playing both sides.
She's been working with them.
She was never just your sister. She's been using you to get to me." The room seemed to close in on Alex as his father's words settled like a bomb in his mind. For a moment, Alex couldn't breathe. He had trusted Mia more than anyone. She had always been there for him, the protective older sister who had his back no matter what. But now his father was telling him she had been working against him all along, working with them. But who were they?
What did his father mean by that?
"I know this is a lot to take in," his dad continued, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "But Mia's been involved with people who are dangerous, Alex. People I should have stayed away from. I thought I could keep you both safe, but I was wrong. They've been using her to get close to me. And now they're coming for you." The gravity of his father's words hit Alex like a freight train. Everything he thought he understood about his family, his life, everything was suddenly turned upside down. The pieces he had been trying to fit together now felt meaningless. Mia was a part of something darker, something more sinister. And now it seemed like they were all in danger. But just as Alex was trying to process this shocking revelation, another thought struck him. Was his dad's sudden confession just an attempt to cover his own tracks? Was he guilty of something, and this was his way of shifting the blame onto Mia? Alex felt the heavy weight of doubt pressing down on him. He didn't know who to trust anymore, not even his own father. Then, just as Alex was about to demand more answers, his phone buzzed again, interrupting the storm of confusion and fear swirling in his mind. The message was brief, but sent a new wave of terror through him. It was from an unknown number, just like the others, but this time, the message had a chilling tone. "Your dad isn't telling you everything. If you want to survive, stay away from him. He's the one they're after." Alex froze. Every word seemed to hit him harder than the last. His dad wasn't just hiding something, he was a part of whatever dark game had been unfolding. And now, Alex had to question everything: his father, his sister, even the very foundation of everything he thought he knew about his own life. The danger was closer than ever, and the web of lies was thicker than he could have ever imagined. Now the stakes were higher than ever before. Who could Alex trust? Everyone around him seemed to have their own hidden agenda. And as the truth started to slip further away from his grasp, he realized something terrifying. The closer he got to uncovering the mystery, the more everyone around him seemed to be pushing him away. The silence between Alex and his father that night was thicker than anything words could cut through. Hours had passed since that chilling message appeared on Alex's phone, warning him to stay away from the man who raised him. And yet, here they were, two figures sitting across from each other at the kitchen table like strangers, each holding back more than they were willing to admit. The sound of the ticking wall clock seemed louder than ever, marking the seconds that dragged out the inevitable confrontation. Alex's heart pounded as he stared at his father, trying to read something, anything, in his expression. But the man's face was unreadable, and the question haunting Alex refused to go away: was this really his father, or just someone pretending to be? His thoughts swirled in confusion, desperation growing heavier with each breath. The pressure to make a decision was mounting. Should he believe the father who had raised him, who had just confessed to a dark involvement in something that still didn't quite make sense? Or should he trust the ominous warning that had lit up his phone screen, telling him his dad was the enemy? The idea of walking away from the man who had taught him how to ride a bike, bandaged scraped knees, and sat through every parent-teacher conference felt impossible. But what if staying meant walking straight into danger? That night, Alex found himself staring out his bedroom window, watching the shadows twist and move across the lawn. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't even think straight. The faces of the people he loved, his dad, Mia, blurred in his mind with lies, secrets, and half-truths.
His phone buzzed again.
This time it wasn't a threat. It was Mia. She was outside, and she wanted to talk. Against every instinct screaming at him to run, to hide, to forget everything and pretend like none of this was happening, Alex went downstairs and opened the door. Mia stood in the glow of the porch light, her eyes tired and filled with something he couldn't quite name. Not fear, not guilt. Something deeper, like sorrow. And when she spoke, her voice cracked in a way that made Alex's chest tighten. "You have to come with me," she said quietly.
Right now.
"We don't have time." Alex stepped outside, the chill of the night crawling up his spine. "Why should I trust you?" he asked, his voice strained. "Dad said you've been working with him. He said you've been using me to get to him." Mia looked away, her jaw tightening. "I can't explain everything yet. But if you stay here, you're not going to make it through the night." It was an impossible choice. Go with Mia, the sister he now wasn't sure he knew at all, or stay with his father, who may have just lied to cover up something unforgivable. Either decision could be fatal. Either one could be a trap. And yet, standing there in the cold night air, Alex realized he couldn't stand still any longer. He had to choose. But before he could speak, Mia reached into her pocket and pulled out something that made his blood run cold. It was an old photo, one Alex had never seen before. In it, their father stood beside a man who looked hauntingly familiar. Alex stared at the photo, realizing with a sickening twist in his gut that the man beside his dad was the same one from the security footage, the one who had been speaking to Mia at school. The man whose appearance had triggered everything. And the date scribbled on the back? 10 years ago. "I found this in his study," Mia whispered. "He's been in contact with them since we were kids. Everything he told you was a lie." Alex couldn't move.
Couldn't breathe.
His father had lied. About everything. About the danger. About Mia's involvement. About the man in the photo. If this photo was real, and it looked real, then everything Alex thought he knew about his childhood, about the quiet suburban life they had lived, was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. And now, someone had gone to great lengths to keep that illusion intact. But the nightmare wasn't over. Not even close. As they turned to head for Mia's car, a sharp voice rang out from the darkness.
"Don't move."
They froze. The beam of a flashlight cut through the night, and behind it stood a man in a black coat, his face masked, his posture rigid. He held a piece of paper in his gloved hand, and when he stepped forward, he tossed it at Alex's feet. "You've been given a choice," the man said, his voice mechanical and cold. "Return to your home and forget everything you've learned, or keep digging and lose someone you love." "You've been given a choice," the man said, his voice mechanical and cold. "Return to your home and forget everything you've learned, or keep digging and lose someone you love." And then, without another word, The man vanished back into the dark.
Just like that.
Like a shadow that never should have existed. Alex picked up the paper with trembling hands. It was a printed image of someone, his best friend, Josh, tied to a chair, his mouth taped shut, fear blazing in his eyes. The caption read, "You have 24 hours." The world spun. Alex stumbled back, the weight of everything finally crashing down. Now it wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about his family, or the lies that had poisoned them from within. Someone else was involved, someone innocent. And he had to make a choice that felt impossible. Stop searching for the truth and leave his best friend to die, or keep digging and risk losing everyone. The story had just taken a turn he couldn't have predicted. And Alex knew that whatever came next, he wasn't ready. Not for this. Not for the kind of darkness that turns friends into hostages and family into enemies. He was being pushed to the edge. And with every second ticking down, the line between right and wrong was beginning to blur. The clock was now ticking louder than ever. The wind whipped against Alex's face as he and Mia tore down the back roads in her car, headlights slicing through the darkness like knives. The silence inside the vehicle was thick, but it wasn't from lack of things to say. It was because neither of them could find the words. The photo. The threat. Josh's terrified face burned into Alex's memory like a brand. Time was slipping away, and every tick of the clock felt like a countdown to something final. The weight pressing on Alex's chest was more than fear. It was guilt, confusion, and the creeping realization that whatever he thought this was, it was far bigger than anything he could have imagined. They pulled into an abandoned gas station on the edge of town, a place Mia said was safe, though the broken lights and shattered windows told a different story. Alex's nerves were shot, his thoughts scrambled. He had to know more, had to understand why his best friend was being used as a pawn, why his family had been lying to him, why everything he thought was real now felt like part of some carefully orchestrated illusion. Mia finally broke the silence, her voice barely more than a whisper. "This isn't just about Dad. Or you. It's about all of us." Alex turned to her, his heart hammering.
What does that mean?
"Who's all of us?" Mia hesitated, then reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a battered manila folder, one stuffed with printed documents, maps, names, photos. She handed it to him with trembling fingers. Dad wasn't just connected to that man in the photo. He was part of a network. Government contractors. Private defense groups. People who went dark after things went wrong overseas. Black budget stuff, things nobody talks about. And now, years later, it's all coming back. Alex flipped through the papers, his stomach turning with every new revelation. There were surveillance photos of people he knew, teachers from school, neighbors, even Officer Rayburn, the local cop who had always handed out Halloween candy to kids and waved to parents in the morning carpool line. They were all marked. Red circles. Names underlined. Assets. Handlers. Watchers. It made no sense. And yet it made too much sense. "All these people there and on it," he said, stunned. Mia nodded, her face pale. "Some of them knowingly. Others are just being used."
But yes.
This town? It's not just some quiet suburb. It's a controlled environment. A test bed. Dad thought we were safe here because he helped build it. But they've been using it to monitor behavior, collect data, groom people for specific outcomes. And now, they've lost control. That's why they're cleaning it up. Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. The people he passed every day, the grocery clerk, the janitor at school, the mailman, any of them could be involved. Or monitored. Or targeted. It was like the ground beneath him had crumbled, and he'd only now realized he was standing over a sinkhole this whole time. And Josh? He has nothing to do with this. Why take him? Mia swallowed hard. Because you care about him. Because he's leverage. And because he found something he wasn't supposed to see. That hit like a punch.
Josh.
The friend who had helped him through every heartbreak, every failure, every fight with his dad. The one person who had never judged him, never doubted him. And now he was caught in the middle of something that had nothing to do with him. "They gave me an ultimatum," Alex said, staring blankly at the dash. "Give up. Go back to pretending. Or keep pushing and lose someone I love." You think that was a choice? Mia said bitterly. They never give you real choices. It's all manipulation. Illusions to keep you in check. Alex felt the panic rise in his throat again. He was caught in a storm with no way out. But before he could respond, the back door of the car flung open, and Mark climbed in, breathless, eyes wild, a gash on his forehead. Mia, he panted. You didn't tell him? Alex stared at his friend in disbelief. Tell me what? What are you doing here? I thought you. I was part of it too, Mark interrupted, his voice hoarse. Not by choice. My dad works for one of the contracting firms. They've been grooming me for this since I was 12. I didn't even know what it meant until last year. But you were never supposed to be involved, Alex. You were the control. The variable. You were supposed to stay out of it. Alex's entire body went numb. Mark, his best friend since middle school. The same Mark who helped him study for finals, who snuck into late-night movies with him, who swore loyalty on those stupid blood-pact pacts they made as kids. He had been lying to him the entire time. He had been watching him. I wanted to tell you, Mark said, his voice cracking. I tried to warn you to stop digging. But the truth is, they chose you for a reason. What are you talking about? Alex whispered. Mark looked away. Because you're not just some random kid caught in the middle. You're the failsafe. If something ever went wrong, you were meant to reset the entire operation. Your dad knew it. Mia knew it. You were the one they couldn't predict, and that's exactly why they needed you at the center. Alex felt everything inside him collapse. His entire life, every memory, every friendship, every moment of stability was a lie built around him like a cage. And the worst part? Everyone had known. Everyone except him. You need to decide right now, Mark said, eyes pleading. We have maybe an hour before they find this place. Either we burn the whole thing down and go public, or we disappear. You, me, Mia. Off the grid. Forever. Alex stared at both of them, his heart beating like a war drum. He had trusted them. He had loved them. And now they were giving him another impossible choice. Blow up everything, risk the lives of everyone he cared about, expose a conspiracy that could shake the country, or vanish, give up the truth, and live in hiding for the rest of his life. The gas station lights flickered once, and then died. In the distance, the unmistakable rumble of tires on gravel echoed through the night. They were out of time. The air inside the underground compound was colder than Alex expected, thick with the sterile stench of metal and old machinery, humming with power. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long, flickering shadows down the narrow corridor. With Mia on one side and Mark on the other, Alex gripped the keycard they'd recovered from the burned documents stashed in his father's garage. His real father, not the man who pretended to be his dad for 16 years, but the operative who had raised him like a science experiment. The truth had come fast, brutal, and unrelenting in the last 48 hours. He was the failsafe, the linchpin in a covert psychological operation that went deeper than government black sites or private military contractors. The network wasn't just operating in their town, it was their town. Built from the ground up to test social triggers, behavioral obedience, and long-term manipulation. And he'd been the centerpiece the whole time. The silence broke as the massive security door ahead unlocked with a hiss, revealing a command center filled with screens and terminals, all glowing with live footage of the neighborhood above them. Kids playing in backyards. Families at dinner. Teachers closing up classrooms. Everything tracked. Everything cataloged. For a moment, Alex felt like the walls were watching him too. Then he saw him. Commander Nathan Wells, the man behind everything. A graying, cold-eyed former intelligence strategist who had disappeared from public record 2 decades ago. He stood at the center of the room with his arms crossed, flanked by 2 silent men in black tactical gear. But he didn't seem afraid. He looked like someone who had already won, someone who didn't need to raise his voice or reach for a weapon because the damage had already been done. You've come further than anyone else, Wells said calmly, as if greeting a student who'd solved a difficult riddle. I expected you to break down by stage 3. But you didn't. That's why we chose you, Alex. I'm not your experiment, Alex said, voice shaking with fury and fear. You used my friends, my family. You let people suffer. They were variables, necessary sacrifices in the pursuit of a greater outcome. Wells interrupted. What you fail to understand is that we've prevented chaos. Dozens of real-world attacks were defused using data from this town. Do you think it's a coincidence that our algorithms predicted unrest before it happened? You were the calibration. The final equation. Alex's stomach twisted. He remembered every moment of confusion, every person who seemed just a little too perfect, every situation that now felt orchestrated. Josh's abduction. Mark's betrayal. Even the teachers who had seemed too eager to forgive misbehavior or encourage deeper questioning, they weren't mentors. They were handlers. You kidnapped my best friend, Alex said, his voice rising. Where is he? He's safe, Wells replied without emotion. As long as you remain compliant. He was never harmed, just redirected. Mia stepped forward, fury etched across her face. You ruined our lives. For what? A simulation? Data points? This isn't science, it's cruelty. Wells looked at her and smiled faintly. Spoken like someone who doesn't understand the scope of what's at stake. Our country's future depends on control, not chaos. And we control it here. Then came the twist, because just as Wells reached into his coat, not for a weapon but a remote control, Alex's phone vibrated. A single message. From Josh. A photo. His friend, bruised, tied up, eyes pleading. And the GPS pin wasn't underground. It was above ground. In the school gymnasium. Meaning one thing. Wells had lied. Josh was still a bargaining chip. Still a hostage. The rage hit Alex like a tidal wave. He lunged forward, but Mark grabbed him at the last second, pulling him back just as one of the armed men raised a weapon. Mia moved fast, swinging a metal flashlight she'd hidden in her sleeve, striking the man hard enough to disarm him. Chaos erupted. In seconds, the sterile lab turned into a war zone. Alarms blared. Lights flashed red. A fire suppression system activated, releasing plumes of white vapor that blurred vision and dampened sound. Amid the chaos, Wells vanished into a back corridor, but Alex broke free and followed. Adrenaline surged through him as he sprinted through the maze of hallways, every step echoing off the steel walls. When he finally cornered Wells in a control room, the older man stood with his back to him, hands raised. You don't understand, Wells said, still maddeningly calm. Even if you take me down, the system is self-sustaining. Kill the operator, and the machine keeps running. It's already out there, other towns, other systems. You're just scratching the surface. Alex's heart pounded, torn between anger and confusion. But that's when he noticed it, on the monitors behind Wells. One of them showed a live feed, not of the town, but of a completely different city. One he recognized. New York. Hundreds of red markers blinking over rooftops and cars and schools. A new network. A new test bed. This isn't the only one, Alex whispered. Wells turned and nodded slowly.
No.
And it never was. It should have ended there. Alex striking him down, destroying the facility, saving Josh. But just then the final twist hit. The voice over the intercom wasn't from Wells' system. It was from an external override. A female voice, robotic but authoritative. Command sequence overridden. Asset A-17 has fulfilled primary function. Secondary objective initiating. Alex froze. What does that mean? Wells' expression finally cracked.
Fear.
Genuine fear. You triggered the failsafe. Suddenly, the screens flickered and went dark. The whole facility began shaking as an automated shutdown took over, doors locking, lights going out, communication lines severed. Mia and Mark burst into the room moments later, breathless, only for all three of them to stare at the control panel now displaying one final message. Phase 2. Public release commencing. It wasn't over. Whatever Alex had uncovered was just the beginning. And the truth, whatever it really was about to go global. It had been 6 months since the night everything collapsed. Since the alarm screamed through that cold, underground maze of secrets, and the world Alex thought he understood flipped on its head. The fallout hadn't been as explosive as one might expect. No national headlines, no breaking news alerts, no massive trials or public outcry. Instead, it was all absorbed quietly into the shadows, swept away by the very forces that had created it. Government contractors disappeared. Research logs were wiped. Entire buildings were condemned and bulldozed under the pretense of urban renewal. The school where it all started now sat behind caution tape, windows boarded, playground overgrown with weeds. The town still breathed, but something in its rhythm had changed. People didn't walk their dogs after sunset anymore. Parents started asking more questions at PTA meetings. And Alex carried all of it inside him like a scar that wouldn't fade, no matter how many times he told himself it was over. Josh had been found the morning after the facility went dark, left unconscious on the floor of the high school gym with no memory of the last 72 hours. The doctors called it trauma-induced amnesia, but Alex knew better. It was intentional, another calculated erasure by the system to sever loose ends. Josh didn't remember the experiments, the manipulation, or the terror. He only remembered Alex, and for now, that was enough. They didn't talk about it anymore. They went back to being teenagers, at least on the surface, walking to class, laughing about dumb memes, pretending their lives hadn't nearly been traded for psychological warfare data.